In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that we can all relate to, and it's stress. I like to say, dear stress, let's break up. But a lot of times I feel like when talking to my clients, stress management is really stressing them out. I'm sure you guys can relate. Like, am I doing it right? Am I doing all the techniques? I find like a lot of my clients just eating healthy can stress them out. So specifically, we'll be exploring stress management strategies tailored for you all busy multitasking women who are juggling many roles and responsibilities. But before we dive into it, let's understand it a little bit better because it is a natural response to challenging situations. And as working women, it's something we really experience regularly. Whether it's deadlines at work, family obligations, or personal goals, our plates are often full. And I like to say it's a perception of stress because it varies from person to person. So, what stresses me may not stress you, but it is a biological and a psychological response experienced upon encountering a threat that we feel we don't have the resources to deal with. So, we can feel under pressure, facing changes in life. Are you worried about something? Things like you don't feel like you have a lot of control over. But just know that it's normal and natural and that there are good stressors. For example, when you go to the gym and you lift weights, the stress of the muscle will provide a good result, as well as getting out of your comfort zone. It's stressful, we know that, but yet we know that the result is the inner growth, which is amazing. What we really don't want is the prolonged, intractable stress because the stress hormones are meant to flood in and flood out. We're not meant to be in a constant state of stress because ultimately that leads to many health problems because it's that prolonged cortisol that does damage to the brain and the gut. But that could for sure be a whole different podcast. So I feel it's important for each person to understand their stress response. For me, I know I get particularly quiet. I withdraw. I may want to just stay in my pajamas and watch Netflix. I crave salty, crunchy foods like chips and crackers, and I feel muscle tension in my neck and shoulders, and I want to take nice long baths. But for you guys, how do you physically and mentally experience stress? Elise, have you
Yeah,
noticed?
yeah. Um, Several different ways. I will get a clenched jaw and my jaw will hurt. I will also really squeeze my hands. My thumbs will be in and I
Mm.
will I'll make fists and I'll squeeze them until it hurts. And I don't know that I'm doing either of these two things until the pain comes. Um, as I've mentioned, I'm a pretty severe asthmatic, and my stress shows up in my lungs very often. There'll be no environmental changes, but my breathing will change. Um, and and I get a kind of a knot in my chest, a knot in my chest of just feeling tightness overall. That's how it shows up for me, and it's taken me quite a bit to really learn that those are signs of stress.
Well, that's awesome that you figured that out. Beth, how about you?
Yeah, I am with Elise on the clenched jaw. When I'm stressed, it's yeah. I can tell that I'm stressed because of my clenched jaw. And then also too, Nancy, I crave salty, crunchy foods, high carb. And that part of my brain, that my addict part that wants to check out and numb out, wants to buffer. And what buffering is basically avoiding whatever uncomfortable emotion by doing a different activity. Whether that's sitting on the couch and watching Netflix or going shopping or drinking or whatever it is that you use to avoid your emotional life. I know that I'm stressed out when I just have this urge to run away and I have this thought, I just need a break. I just need a break.
Mm.
Mhm.
Fascinating. Well, we do know that carbs will lower cortisol, so that's intuitive on your part. How about you, Gabby?
Um, One of the things I noticed, I get super irritable, super snappy. Just any little thing just really causes a negative emotional kind of response. So I can be a little bit bitchier, moodier, more, you know, um, to my family, of course, are the ones who bear the biggest brunt of that. I carry my physical stress. I notice it a lot in my neck and my shoulders.
Mhm.
And it's always this left shoulder, on the left side. I carry a lot of tension there. And so I notice as soon as that shoulder starts tightening up in a situation, it's usually when I'm either talking to someone, as a physician, I have a lot of conversations all day long. So it may be at work, and I notice it when I'm in clinic, and I may notice that shoulder starting to come up. So I do tend to get musculoskeletal kind of tightening there whenever I start to get stressed out. And I crave alcohol whenever I do get more stress, so more than normal. So, and this will usually be like in the evening time, after work, when I notice myself wanting to, wanting to relax, with alcohol. So that is what I don't really, crave certain foods as much as a salty, sweet margarita. That would be something that I would crave during stressful times. And then I just get more tired than normal. So I feel like I need more sleep. So when I notice I'm feeling exhausted, and it's usually not like a physical exhaustion because my body feels, tired, like after a hard workout or something like that. It's just kind of like a vague overall kind of like just fogginess. Like I just, need to go to bed earlier or sleep in a little bit more. So if I notice myself feeling like I just need to sleep more, not wanting to get up in the morning, then, that's kind of how my stress shows up, as like just wanting to sleep more sometimes.
That's great. We all have the awareness that we've got the tension, the muscular tension. And I think that is something that, from a primitive mind, you're ready to run, so you tense up.
Mhm.
So let's talk about some ways we can manage this. Obviously, first and foremost, self-care, because it's really easy to put our needs on the back burner when life gets hectic. Scheduling me time, I think, is important. Even if it's in the middle of the busy day, if you can just kind of close your eyes for a moment and just even take 3 deep breaths, I think that's really helpful. Taking time to do some meditation. One of the things that I like, if you've got time, is this pose called legs up on the wall. Have you guys ever heard of that or done that? Legs up on the wall. One of the things I think it's really helpful for if you have any GI or gut issues from having a lot of stress. I think the reason people get into gut issues when they're stressed is because that blood is shunted away from the gut. It goes into your arms and legs to prepare to run. So, legs up on the wall brings the blood back into your gut, and it's really physiologically impossible to be in the fight flight response when your legs are up in the wall. So that's good. I love magnesium or Epsom salts baths with essential oils. For me, that's super calming, and I think it's very restorative. But do you guys do any? Have you heard about the EFT or the tapping? Yeah, I think that's really helpful. It's a great resource because when you physically tap on the specific points, there's ones on your face. It actually sends a signal to the meridians that's very calming, and it sends a signal to the amygdala. We could do a whole nother episode on that one. Is there anything specific you guys do, Beth?
I just wanted you to maybe clarify for some of our listeners that don't know what the amygdala is and that part of our brain.
Oh, it's a primitive part of our brain that's dedicated to our survival. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is our planning mind, our conscious mind. Mindfulness can reduce stress levels. We can say something.
I was going back to Beth's question about where we identify what to do as soon as we identify that stress. So as soon as and I didn't realize this before when it was happening, as soon as I noticed that tension starting, that upper back kind of shoulder tension, I just stop and I focus on it and really kind of mentally work on relaxing it, because it's something that I'm doing subconsciously without realizing, actually doing this kind of thing, and just kind of working on getting that posture down and kind of relaxing it in the moment as soon as I feel it starting to build up. And that's really, really helpful to prevent it from kind of aching more on a chronic basis, is acknowledging it as soon as it starts and really working on relaxing it in that moment. and nobody knows I'm doing it. Like the person in front of me or in the meeting or wherever I am, they don't even notice. So, but I do, and I notice, and that then sends a response to my brain, like, okay, we're safe. We can relax. You know, everything's going to be okay, just by allowing those muscles to kind of relax and get back to a more neutral type of position.
Mhm. I love the self-talk. You can even do what's called a body scan if you want to take just a couple 10 minutes or whatever and just literally run through, your head down to your face, your jaw, and just, tell it to relax and let go and just go all the way down to the body, the shoulders, the neck, the breathing, the stomach, the legs, the thighs, and just check in with your body and feel what's coming up for you. Because I think that's super important to connect with the physical body when our minds are running for their lives.
Yeah. And
So,
I also notice sometimes I tend to hold my breath too,
oh
not
my,
really realizing I'm holding my breath.
me
And
too.
so being aware and like, okay, breathe, deep breath in, deep breath out. And people don't realize you're doing it as you're talking to them. They're not even
No,
paying attention to you.
Right.
so
I do
funny.
that. I find that too. When I feel any of the symptoms, I will also just pause and I'll ask myself the 5 whys. And that's really, why am I feeling stressed? And whatever answer I come up with, well, why is that making you stressed? And I'll come up with an answer and I'll just keep asking why until I can get to what I think is the root of it.
Mm.
And then I will be very purposeful about how do I get out of the symptoms. So I've come to the root cause, but I still have all these symptoms. So for me, I usually, you ladies know, my favorite place in the world is my bed. I love my bed. It's my safety place. It's my comfort zone. So I will often just go to my bed and sometimes I do the body scan like Nancy mentioned. Sometimes I will do some breathing exercises to help me really understand what that knot in my chest is and help me release that knot or help my asthma symptoms if they're starting to flare up. And then for me, meditation is really important. I used to be a meditation skeptic, but over the last couple of years, I've really become reliant on meditation, guided meditation, to really help me relax, process, come to terms, and be okay with what's happening in my body, the mind-body connection. So that's really where I go and spend my time. And obviously, you can't always go to bed, right? But you can always kind of ask those questions. Why is this knot there? And breathing into that knot and helping that knot relax, closing my eyes and really breathing into the knot, exhaling the knot and letting it kind of unfurl.
It's beautiful. I know for me, for a long time, this is maybe 25 years ago, I lived in a constant state of anxiety and panic attacks. And I did realize that I wasn't breathing. I remember going to the med center, thinking I was having a heart attack or something, and my pulse ox was like 88. And I realized I wasn't breathing. And so oxygen is so important for us, right? It's
Yes, it
kind of
We
is.
need it to survive. Dr.
exactly.
Gabby, do we need oxygen to survive?
Yeah, of
But
course. Right.
Yes.
And we take it for granted, you know?
no,
It's something we think is so automatic. And um, but in those moments of, because it's almost like a fight or flight situation when
Mhm.
that perceived stress is confronted or is identified, that our body just tightens up, stop breathing, be quiet, make yourself little and tight because, there's danger. And it may just be your mom in front of you criticizing you.
Exactly. It's
Or your
so
teenager's bedroom, walking into your teenager's bedroom with all the chaos in there. And it's like,
Yeah.
cool.
Right.
that may be the stress in the moment. And you just sometimes, okay, relax, shoulder, come down, shoulder. Okay, let's breathe. Everything's okay. We're safe here.
Like, nothing's
You're
gone wrong.
fine.
Right.
Nothing's gone wrong.
Right.
Yeah, that's my biggest tool in my toolbox is breathing. When I notice that I'm in that sense of being very stressed out, I just sit and I do what's called 5-5-7 breath. I inhale for 5 seconds. I hold my breath for 5 seconds and then I exhale for 7. And I will do that for a round of 10 times. And then, like you had said, Nancy, after that, I do a body scan and ask myself, what does Beth need right now? You know, especially during my work day, still working as a full-time hospice nurse, it's so easy to put our own needs away while we're working, while we're caring for people, and just, you know, keep going. And sometimes the answer is you need to drink some water and go to the bathroom. And just doing those like throughout the day is what I find helpful.
So important, especially the going to the bathroom part. As a former nurse too,
Yeah.
for me,
All
when I
to all clinicians, right?
yeah,
All clinicians. I remember as a respiratory therapist, there would be 12-hour shifts and, you have to be purposeful in carving out the time to have some water, to eat a little something, to go to the bathroom. Absolutely. So all you clinicians out there.
yeah, when I first started doing self-care, for me, self-care was going to the bathroom when I first felt my bladder being full. I thought, this is so ridiculous. This is crazy. But it was something that I had neglected in myself. So, for sure, one of the things I think we need to do too is make sure our boundaries are in place, learning to say no when you need it, and knowing that no is a complete sentence. It doesn't need explanation. Also, delegating tasks and communicating your limits to others. What do you guys think about that?
I love that you said no is a complete sentence because I find myself always explaining a no or explaining an ask. Like I just got back from Antigua, which was lovely. And I remember I went into the gift shop and I wanted to change a large bill to little bills. So I just needed to say to her, can you change the bills? But I went out, I'm like, yeah, there's been some really nice people. I'd like to give some tips. And I didn't need to tell her that. I just needed to say, can you do it? So I love that you point out that we don't always have to explain ourselves.
No, it's
No is a
funny.
complete sentence. I
It
love
is,
that.
really is.
We're going
Yeah,
to
that
add that
came
to the
in
Nancyisms.
Funny.
for me as far as work. When it came to saying no, it was there's always this expectation as physicians to be a part of the committees. There's so many different committees. There's, the patient satisfaction committee, there's the quality committee, there is the health and safety committee, there's all of these committees. And it's just the leadership, whatever committee, and that you are just going to do your job, take care of your patients, and then also do all of these different committees. And there was a point where I thought I had to just thought I had to. And no, I don't have to. And saying no, and not even an explanation. There would be an explanation why, and I would always say, "Oh, because I'm a mom and I have kids and da 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 da." But even if I didn't have all of that, I just don't want to. And now, a lot of times when people ask me why aren't you doing this, or can you do this? No, why not? Because I don't want to.
Oh my gosh. I don't
I'm
want
just being
to
honest,
do it.
I just don't
Right.
want to. I don't feel like I'm going to get anything from it, and I just don't want to.
That's
Good.
great. I think we
Love
could
it.
get away with that when we were little. I don't want to, but I think totally bringing it in as we get older. I just don't want to. Nope,
Well, I
sorry.
will just say I do have a 6-year-old, and she tells me that all the time. So I'm learning from her. She's inspiring me to be a better person.
She's your mentor. I love that.
Love it.
Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of mentors, I think it's really important to have a good support system to lean on your friends, family, and colleagues. Connecting with people. And I would say hiring a coach, because a coach can absolutely help you unravel your mind, look at the facts of the situation, and help you to find resources within yourself, which is so priceless.
Yeah.
I
I
don't,
can I'd love to share that, an example around that. I have a new coach, who I just love. And one of my first sessions with her, I had an agenda of what I wanted to talk about. And when I got on with her, I said to her, I'm like, I have what I want to talk about, but I just need to ask for your grace a little bit because there's so much going on in my personal life and my stress level is really high. So I just might be a little distracted. And she stopped me right there and said, well, that's what's most important. Let's talk about that. And we spent the whole hour on all the different things that were going on in my personal life. And I can't tell you how much better I felt. And just little strategies that I got from her, from what she did to help me release the tension and release the stress and to be okay with what was going on in my world. So thank you for bringing that up, Nancy, because a coach can be so powerful when you are under stress.
Mhm. I know for me, if I feel like I'm stressed and I start talking about it, when I get it out of my mouth, it's like, that's really not that big a deal. So I really think that that's super powerful to be connected,
Yeah.
have a support system. Okay, guys, any last minute things here before we wrap up?
I wanted to just go back to how you opened the session, Nancy, because I thought that was so powerful. That is stress management stressing us out.
Right.
The we have to eat a certain way, we have to exercise, we have to do yoga, whatever it is that society, stress management is such a word out there, right? It's such a hot topic right now. But the whole concept of creating that structure of what you should do can be very stressful. So I love that you brought up that way. And I'm wondering, what you all think about kind of breaking that whole mentality about stress management. And I think we've done that here, but I would love to hear specifically, how we break that out, that the concept of stress management shouldn't be stressful. And if it's stressful, you're not doing it right. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I agree that we can sometimes stress ourselves out in trying to do whatever it is the perfect way, right? And but focusing, like you just mentioned, Elise, was fabulous how you mentioned it. Focusing on what is the most important thing for you right now. Focus on that one thing, and it could be something small. It could be something that um, is a small step in you feeling better. And for me, it would just be going to bed earlier. And even though if I step back, it might be in my mind, I have, a million charts and a million messages. I have, all of these things on the calendar looming. But if I'm already starting to feel that physical kind of fatigue, kind of creeping in, that fog, that vague sensation of that I've already identified, okay, this is what stress in my body starts to feel like, going to bed earlier, just that simple thing is what really helps me at the end of the day. Before, I used to think, well, I need to stay up later and get all of these things done because there's not enough time. And it took some coaching to really understand, if I am not feeling at my best, I don't work as well. And those things that I feel need to get done, stressing me out, they're going to continue to be there. They're not going to get done efficiently. The quality is going to be poor. And so focusing on that sleep and realizing everything is going to get done. Everything is going to be okay. We're going to be fine. Things are going to get handled. Eventually, everything does fall into place and take care of itself. But if I don't take care of me in that moment and listening to my body's need to get that extra rest because of this, just the energy that it's, sapping from my mind, then it's impossible to feel good. So just focusing on that one thing, but identifying what is that one thing that you really need to focus on in the moment.
That's amazing. I love that. That breaks it down. That makes it really doable, really simple. Anything you want to add, Beth?
Well, what I was going to share is, for me, what has helped is to redefine what stress management and self-care means for me. Before, stress management to me, it had to look a certain way. And if I wasn't doing it a certain way, I was beating myself up about it. And like we talked about, we're stressing out over me not doing the stress management correctly. And so redefining what that meant made a huge shift in my perspective. And I think there's this idea that self-care is selfish and that it involves bubble baths and, hours alone by yourself. But redefining it to me, self-care, like we all talked about, really just was throughout my day, checking in with myself, noticing if I was not breathing and doing the 5-5-7 breath and checking in, what does Beth need right now? Like that, like keeping it simple. Like it doesn't have to be this big, huge, okay, I meditate at this time, I go to yoga at this time, I eat this, this, and this, I go to bed at this time, and I drink this much water. If those things don't happen, your negative part, like our last podcast, our brain is going to be an asshole to us. And like, what's your problem? Why didn't you get that done? And so that has been really transformative for me, is redefining what it looks like. And it doesn't have to look like what other people show on Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
I have an example of that. So I know that I feel better and less stressed when I'm outside and I'm in nature. And, during COVID, when I wasn't working, I was able to like go for hikes. And, we used that hiking app to find different hiking places all over the state. And that's kind of what we did. And so I've made that's become part of my manual in my mind of, all right, if you're stressed, then you need to get in your walking gear and go out and walk. And sometimes that stresses me out. So over the summer and the fall, what I would do is, if I was starting to feel stressed about having to, whatever, find time to go for a walk and get in the clothes and be back in time to get back on a call, I would just go sit outside, sit out on my pool deck, and just be outside. And then after I did that for a little bit, I would walk around my pool, right? So I have an L-shaped pool, and I would walk around the pool in my flip-flops, right? With my dog chasing me behind me, right? And I started that as a way to not stress about taking a walk, but still getting the benefits of being outside and walking around and clearing my mind and calming myself down. But that took me a while to get to, because I kept putting this pressure on myself. Nope, go put those hiking shoes on, go to the app, find a place, get your water bottle, get in the car, go to this place. Do you have enough time? Will you be sweaty when you get back? Can you get back to work? And it was counterintuitive. It was actually making me more stressed, this idea of the stress reduction. So Nancy, I love that you brought that up in the beginning, because I think that's so important.
Stress management stresses us out. That's fun.
Yes.
Really is funny. But I
Yeah.
love the nature thing, and I love the grounding, when you've got your feet on the earth,
Yeah.
because I really feel like nature does a lot to bring us into balance. And I always like to look for nature to see what nature's doing. It doesn't stress itself, it doesn't compare, it just does, like the acorn has everything within it to grow into a magnificent, beautiful big tree. So
Yeah.
nature just does nature. It doesn't worry about things, it doesn't stress out.
Yeah.
So
So
this was a great podcast, ladies. This was fun to hang out with you guys. I appreciate it. I think we came up with some really good ideas, good suggestions for people. So thank everybody for being with us. And if you like this, please share it, comment, give us a review. And I appreciate all of it.
subscribe so you follow us too.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a fabulous day.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, one more thing before we leave. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are certified professional coaches, but this broadcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice.
Okay. Thanks for listening. See you next week.